Council meeting. I'll open us with a council prayer. As our community starts the celebration of Diwali, may we embrace the light within ourselves and each other as we work with the communities and place we love, the Tararua District, to build a better and brighter future. Help us to share the spirit of Diwali through joy, kindness, and positivity. Bless us with gratitude, humility, protection, unity, and love this year. Amen. Yeah, we don't have any apologies today, but we are joined online by Councillor Franklin and also Officer Raj Sapaya. So welcome this morning. Can you hear okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Thank you, Mayor Tracy. Your worship.
Right, we don't have anyone here for public forum. Notification of items not on the agenda. There are none. Declarations of conflicts of interest in relation to today's meeting. None. Right, now just the confirmation of the minutes. Can I have somebody move they are a true and correct record? Move Councillor Sutherland, second Councillor Petty-Weber. Just run through those. Page 5, page 6, page 7, and page 14, 15, 16. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. Right, we were due to receive a petition, but we just don't have Beck Smith here at the moment. So I'm just going to move us on to item 10.4 if I can, and welcome Mavis Mullins to the meeting as well while we run through this report. Welcome, Peter.
Yeah, well, thank you, Your Worship. So this is a ambitious project, in that it's not often that solar panels are put on top of water. So there's only 2, I understand, other of this proposal in the country at present. So it's generating a wee bit of interest. I don't have a picture for you as in the report as to how they float, but I just printed off something that I wanted to quickly give you a sense. They're basically plastic floating.
Polystyrene and stuff.
No, not for, yeah. Gives you a sense of how it's going to operate and function. So these need an area of the water as well. So we're essentially looking to use about half of the actual reservoir, plus pond area. So it's actually 14% of the 10,500 square metre site. The panels themselves allow pass through of water, sunlight. Sunlight. They actually have water going on. So the trick here is that they are trying to operate as a pond for wastewater and collect electricity from sunlight. So they're kind of competing because there's biological activity that goes on in these ponds that need UV or for the bugs to do their thing. The difference with this pond and why it was this pond is it's the 4th pond of the 3. It's at the end of the line of the processing, and its intention when it was built was to be the overflow of stormwater inflow. So in other words, it was meant to be maintained quite low so that when there was a surge of infiltration, it could take the heat from that event. And then after the storm event passes, the water is meant to be pumped out and ready for the next event. So that was the design originally. The interesting bit about these panels is because they're see-through, the UV will still get through. It's really the floating pods that are going to stop that sunlight getting through. So roughly 20% are the solar panels of that 40% area and 20% are the actual pods. So we're going to get a decrease in the amount of light reaching into that particular pond. And so our engineers are just assessing that. So these are the detailed considerations that we're just working through presently. In terms of otherwise, there's a major deadline is 31st of March next year for the build to be completed and for at least 70 customers in that order.
50 odd items.
Yeah, to be signed up as a new retailer who is beneficiary of the surpluses made from council paying for the electricity. So this is why it's seen as a procurement of electricity contract rather than a council build. So it's not council taking the risks of building it. Rangatani, the charitable trust, charitable incorporated society. Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Charitable trust. I'll get it right yet. Is the one that will be paid by council to supply electricity to council for that site. Any excess, the charitable trust will deliver to the power grid and get funding for that supply. When batteries are included in this, that amount that's paid to put into the grid will reduce quite significantly. So hopefully that's where we will head, because when we put battery system in, it means that sunlight generated during the day will be stored or operate the plant at night. And that's actually a better return for the charitable trust than supplying the grid. The grid's always at a discounted rate. And so there's a sweet point in here that it's a win-win for everyone. The other thing though is if the grid goes down for any reason, the supply goes down, for the first time we've got a way of operating that plant and still complying with our consent. But that's a significantly improved output from this for council. The generator to run that site would be huge. And this basically gets around that issue when you can generate your own electricity on site and store that energy. So that's where we're at. It's moving very fast because we've got this 31st of March deadline. And I'll hand over to Mavis.
Thank you. Kia ora everybody, and thanks for the opportunity. It is moving quickly, but we have to remember we've been working on this now for close to 2 years. So it's always that last rush to get things done. MB are feeling comfortable that we've moved in the right direction. The flotation came about because we agreed and sympathised with the Maniapoto whānau. They didn't want any further land used for any activity other than what it was taken for, and we agreed with that. So that's when we looked for other alternatives or other options. And the flotation is relatively new, but it's proven. We're hoping that, we're doing a lot of work at the front end to ensure that risk is being managed. And of course, Mr. Wimsett, the chief advisor here, is a stickler for risk opportunities or risk mitigation. So there's been a lot of discussion about that as well. I think the big thing is we're prepared to take that risk. We're prepared to ensure that an end of term opportunity is given, because we also believe that new technologies will be in place by then, and then, you know, the next phase, whatever that might be, will be available to us rather than just rolling over what we have. So I'm open to any questions or comments that.
Worship. Great for the update. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that. I have two questions really. One's around unintended consequences in your view, Mavis, and also because it requires an access agreement with council. I'm assuming some of those conditions will outline. So in the case of something underneath the flotation devices that belong to us, you know, have we gone through all of the iterations of what could possibly happen that would require council to have to get in and do stuff? So unintended consequences, I mean, this is a fantastic project. You're looking at innovative ways of creating energy for the community, Mavis, but you know, I mean, you've mentioned risk management and all of that, but is there something that has come up in those discussions? Is, oh, if that happened?
I think the dredging might be one thing. Yeah, but because this is only covering, it's not even.
That's 40%.
Yeah, there's still opportunities to run barges and to do those sort of things. The other thing we thought about, if that wasn't enough, the flotation devices could be untethered, and because it rolls out. So, you know, we've thought about if something happened, could you have access?
Yes.
Okay.
We move within the areas that are available.
Got Glengarry Gales down there because that was my next question was. Yeah.
Because they're tethered to the side is quite limited in terms of the available space, particularly between pond and 3 and 4. It's quite narrow. So the ability to get utility vehicles through those points when they're basically concrete blocks needs to be thought through. And, you know, the one scenario is that they're dug in to the ground. So you scoop a bit out and place them in the ground so you can still travel over the top. It's not as if there's a lot of area for trucks, but then the point is with the operators, they never do that. So what are the scenarios where they would need that type of vehicle access, a truck based? It's probably sufficient that our little 4-wheeler can get through and do what it needs to. But even then, that's very rare. The occasions where this would occur is if something went wrong. So what would go wrong? It's a lined small pond with a limited amount of activity going on in it. What could go wrong is an earthquake. So it gets disruptive and you have to go and repair it, in which case kind of all bets are off anyway. The other thing is the sludge build-up. How is the reduced UV going to impact on the biological build-up, and what is the technology of the future going to be in terms of cleaning the bottom of lined reservoirs? It's not the same as what we used to do, where we would empty, wait for a few weeks to dry it out and put in the diggers. You can't dig on a lined pond. You have to use this barge-based pump system into geobags. Geomembrane bags might be on the shoreline, but they don't have to be on the barge. So, and this is quite a small pond, so it's relatively accessible. I think the most important thing right now is that we assess what the sludge levels are, because those that line pond has probably been operational 7-8 years, a bit longer. There'll be a little bit of build-up of sludge, no doubt. we just need to have eyes on what that is now and whether there's any, I think that would be the biggest thing, is that we suddenly have to desludge it now, and we never thought that we would need to.
Thank you. Appreciate the thinking that's gone in around the different iterations.
So then it's how do you design it so you can pull things back or enable access later?
Will I go more? Then I've got Councillor Johns and Councillor Long.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Thanks very much for coming along and giving an update. Some really exciting things in there. I'm quite keen. Councillor Wards has covered a good chunk of my first question, but quite keen to just have a look at 3.3, which was around the potential discounts or fixed price costs for council. And you'll recall I mentioned that at the first meeting. Just wondering if any more thought has gone into what that might look like as a benefit to ratepayers, but also quite keen to just get a bit of a brief understanding of some of the social benefits to some of those lower income ratepayers that are mentioned in the report as well.
Start with the negotiations.
So the idea behind this is that we had come up with the right concept. That means the costs to deliver that keep on changing. So the outcome is that there will be a return to the charitable trust that is non-taxable, that they can distribute to their whānau based on a needs basis. And so from our point of view, we have a fixed contract for 5 years through MB, through the government procurement process. The reason that we haven't had massive spikes and haven't gone bust like some companies is because that is actually a futures driven market that we've hooked into. So we've basically got a hedged price for 5 years. So that's why we weren't affected at all by these recent spikes. All we're saying is one site is going to have a alternate source of energy. We're not actually breaking that contract. We're just reducing the supply through that contract. So that's one aspect. Okay. In terms of the price, so we know what our current price is. So to get a gain from this, all it has to be is less than that. All it also has to be is protect us from price increases in the future. So capital cost is largely paid for by Ministry of Business and Innovation for this project. That means the risk taking for charitable trust is low, as long as they can develop that site within that total budget. Now, the great thing about this project is that solar panels and batteries have been reducing in price. Our dollar is probably strengthening, making it easier to import. So at the moment, we're on the right side of this project in terms of costings. The only really serious deviation is that it's now floating instead of a fixed anchored system on land. So that changes some of the cost factors. So solar energy company, Tumara Energy, who's developing the site, their costs have to be right for the charitable trust for them to be able to advise us what deal can be done. So we're all working within the right parameters of no more than what we currently pay or less, and no more increases into the future, which seems highly likely based on the current growth forecast for the energy market in New Zealand.
Quick follow-up. It does. I'm quite keen to more sort of focus it on the direct benefits to ratepayers, and I think absolutely understand all of that and see all of the benefits within it. I suppose, and maybe it's not one for now, maybe it's another update for us as a part of this, but one thing I'm quite keen to see is what the direct potential benefits to ratepayers may be. And I suppose there's a couple of considerations within this. I mean, you know, it's not land that necessarily was going to be used for any other purpose. So if there's no operational risks, totally get that. That's great. But it is using some ratepayer land. There's also, I imagine, a fair bit of time from your perspective, Peter, and other staff time that have gone into it. So I am quite keen to see what some of those benefits might look like, because I actually think that that's an important part of the success story of this project, that we can let people know a bit of otherwise unusable land is going to bring some benefits to a really important charitable trust within our district, but also directly to our ratepayers. So I suppose if I could just make that as a request for a future update, that would be handy.
If I can just add to that, the whole purpose of undertaking this project was for it to be win-win. We need it to be win for council because that's us anyway, and it's the royal us, so that has to be a good thing. In terms of the beneficiaries, and I don't like that word, but those who will be receiving grants or assistance, we've developed out, there's a criteria that we worked with MB for these families, and our assessment at the moment, and it's all still yet to be proven, but where we've been able to dig down to, is that we want this to be a material, make a material difference to families. And for those that apply and meet all the criteria, it could be up to $1,000 a year. Now that's material for 58 families. So as I say, it's been really important for us that everyone can tick it off as being, we've all got a bit of this pie.
Councillor Gilmore, are you happy if I note that as an action point, just for the ratepayer benefit for the solar farm to come back, maybe a figure around the electricity saving?
I think the idea is a good idea on a number of counts. I guess I'm a little. My only concern, I guess, is along with Scott. What is the risk to the ratepayer? For instance, I presume there are aerators in that pond operating. No. If the sludge buildup is increased as a consequence of lack of sunlight, thereby creating an additional or greater cost to the ratepayer, has that been assessed, or the risk of that and the cost thereby?
That's exactly where we're at the moment in doing that assessment. We need to understand that for sure. And there might be simple mitigations. And when you think about what we are hoping to do by the removal of the dissolved solids, the DAF unit, and what it's meant to be doing, and removing solids before they sink to the bottom, and also the pre-treatment, it would be great if we could reduce the solids even entering the pond system to start off with. And that would be a wonderful starting point. So then the whole pond system, it would be far less required to do what it's currently doing. And so we may mitigate all of our below surface sludge removal in the future. You know, so there are still things to do. We don't know where the technology goes in terms of that vacuum system. Just conscious that you've got self-vacuuming systems now all over the place. I've never seen them for ponds. Maybe that's a business opportunity for someone to invent. So you just can't quite second guess everything. We know that the amount of sunlight will still be reaching into the water to a significant degree. But we still need to understand what the biological impacts will be, and what studies have been done on these internationally. So we still need to do a little bit of digging just to make sure that we've got that covered. If that means that there's an aerator, a small aerator or flow system that's moving through that pond, at least you've got the electricity being generated locally to pay for it.
You mentioned batteries, putting in batteries and as a security thing in the case of an outage. Has that been an issue up till now?
I recall times that we've reported that we've had too much water and we've had to bypass the treatment system and go to direct to river in breach of the consent. I can't recall that has happened recently, and that's the point of managing the heights of the ponds.
Because of the power outage.
Not because of power outage, but because of a surge event.
Yeah, but power outage.
Or there is a long-term power outage. They don't happen very often. And that's why we haven't proceeded to put a generator on site, because the generators are very expensive. The amount of draw on those big blower pumps for the microfiltration is very high. That's why the site has been chosen in the first place, because it is a high demand, energy demand site for our council. It's one of 3 high demand sites.
Yes, that's why. Why the batteries?
Oh, sorry.
No, why the batteries? Let's go to the grid.
So the grid will return maybe 8 to 12 cents, and our current electricity cost as council, excluding just GST, is 29 cents. So it's far more profitable to supply energy to council than it is to the grid. And the other thing is that it can only produce output during sunlight hours. So we have to operate that plant 24/7. You can sometimes do more in the day than you do at night, but it does have to operate continuously to maintain the throughput.
I could just add to that, it's certainly in our thinking within the next 12 months to consider batteries and how, we're just waiting for the technology to really come right. But we see there would be benefits in batteries in the long term, because energy stored could then be used at night, whereas we're not really that keen to put it into the grid, to be honest. Much rather have us use it. Yeah.
You can sell it to the council at a higher amount than you're going to get.
That's right. True. But cheaper than you'd get it anywhere else. Yeah.
But that income has to pay for the capital cost of the batteries. So there's a cost to do this.
Councillor Long, then I've got Councillor Chase, Councillor Wallace and Councillor Sutherland.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, Mavis, I was about to say when I came up here that it has to be a win-win. You're 100% correct. Yep. The other one was the desludging. Would it be prudent just to desludge that number 4 pond before work starts? So it hasn't been desludged up till now in 8 years.
I think this is where we do a dip test, basically, and we see what's there. There are other ways that we've done this previously, which is where you seed a particular type of bacteria that gobble the sludge and reduces it down further. It may be a non-issue. We never used to desludge very often. Sometimes that's because we should have desludged, but we haven't. And if we're looking at a 10-year contract, we know at least the end point of when we could reassess that. But I think we need to have those contingencies about if we do need to do it sooner, how are we going to do that? And how do we affect that within the design that we're now intending to use?
I've noted the sludge assessment and mitigations to come back. Right, thank you, Councillor Chase.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Tracy. Like Sharon, it sounds awesome if it's a win-win for both council and for Te Maira Trust. Some unintended consequences I am thinking about is what other council land will you need to get the power to the transmission grid, as well as if we were to get the batteries, how much of the land will you need to store the batteries?
So to give you a sense, a 10-foot shipping container in the States, is all that's needed for 1 megawatt currently. So that's a lot of energy. So you can scale it right down. So a 10-foot shipping container is basically that sort of area. So we've got that area available at that site. There is presently a transformer on site that ScanPower have provided. It's actually just been upgraded not so long ago. So a lot of the discussions are about how ScanPower facilitate this. One of the biggest costs tend to be the transformer conversion and grid protection that's required, so that it's not like a transformer that doesn't overload the grid. So there has to be a way of dispersing excess energy if the grid can't cope with it. Sean Lyons is online. He's just been meeting with ScanPower today. Is there anything you wish to add, Sean?
Yeah, I would envisage that, you know, in time, most of our society is going to be run off electricity of some kind. Okay, that's kind of what all the technology people are telling us. And we're currently in discussions with ScanPower about opportunities to develop in other sites in Tararua. And it really comes down to how their network evolves. And I guess doing it in a way that doesn't burden people who utilize ScanPower services with unnecessary costs. So it's an ongoing conversation, and the technology is shaping that. You know, partnerships take time to work and get right. And this has been a project that's gone through a few iterations with neighbours and things like that. As we see this stuff become more of the norm, I would think you guys will probably want to come back and revisit what other land you can actually apply to solar, because we're an energy hungry community, like most parts of New Zealand. So we can't really foresee anything immediately that's going to be required in addition on that site, but it's an opportunity that should be explored by council or others. Does that answer your question?
Not really. I just want to know what additional, pretty much what other land will be used for this project other than just the pond. That is council land that if we were to agree to this, how much extra is going to be needed? Because when we look at the dam, we've had to purchase more land for turning around with trucks and stuff. I'm just thinking of all those extra costs that could come in on this project.
I can't see any other land that's required at this point in time.
Through your worship, on page 4 of the report, the one where are coloured areas, those were all the areas that we looked at as options. There was only 2 green areas there that were potential adequate sites for solar panels that didn't have some sort of difficulty. So there is one piece of land there. that's where you might cite something to operate the two purple buildings that are there. So you could actually have solar panels up on the hill that supplied energy down to the dog pound and the recycling centre kiosk building, for instance. The reason you wouldn't run them off the roofs of those buildings is that they're quite low lying, and the kiosk is shaded by giant pine trees. So that's actually an important consideration. But the other aspect of this type of energy source is that it needs to be quite close to the place that needs the energy. It's a DC, AC electricity issue. AC is how we transport electricity over distance to keep the lines from heating up and reducing the effective flow through and loss. Line loss, they call it. 7% is the average line loss of an electricity company. So I used to audit electricity companies, and that would be one of my checks to check whether people were stealing electricity, of all things. And you have to convert it to DC because all motors actually run on DC. All of our equipment, the reason why we have to plug things in, and there's this chunky plug, you would know, there's an AC-DC converter going on in every single device.
Noam, if I can just go direct to your question, as we envisage it, there should be no further land or no land required other than the container if and when batteries become a point of purchase. But even then, you know, these things are getting smaller and smaller all the time, but we do not see a big footprint on land here.
There's one final caveat, one final thing. If our energy demand increases, we find that we want to put more solar panels on, and the question is, where would they go? That hasn't been addressed, but we have close by options in that area, and you would be not looking at doubling the amount of panels or anything of that nature. But there's always that uncertainty that our demand will increase for some reason, like a new treatment system. Or maybe over time, the actual effective production from these panels reduces as they slowly deteriorate, and we supplement it with a few extra panels here and there.
Councillor Chase, I've noted that land requirement just as one to come back on to confirm that. Right, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. Yeah, I've got a few notes down here. So we're changing, we've got an anaerobic pond, and this is an aerobic pond. You're going to put a cover on. So an aerobic pond works through the air, right? So you're going to, and that's admittedly you've applied that science that you don't know the answer to that yet. First of all, I'm really happy that this is a win-win, as long as it's a win-win for everyone. So that's the science. We've got the note there coming back on the science of that. So that's a risk, right? What is the size of this field in kilowatts?
Oh, I have that written down somewhere. I'd say.
I'd hope you'd know, not just say.
No, 730,000 kilowatts per hour.
That's 7.5 gigawatts.
No, it's not good. No, it's not gigawatts.
Less than one.
693,866 kilowatt hours per year.
Sorry again. Put your mic.
I have to read that out for everyone.
693,866 kilowatt hours per year. Yeah. And it will vary in a range depending on the weather.
Yeah, exactly. That leads me on to the batteries. So the batteries, I did an exercise for my place, 103,000. So actually, my place, 103,000 to put batteries just for me. So batteries are pretty expensive. Okay, so as you said, you want to use that energy, which is good sense, because most people with solar power units don't like selling it back to the grid because of that 29.12 cents changeover, 50% less, 60% nearly. And of course that sludge one, right? Because all I can think of is Carterton and Featherston. Sorry, Featherston drew to a halt, but I would imagine at the push of a button, our council will have an update on our pond's depth at the moment. But yeah, that big one it's worrying me because an aerobic pond is designed for a reason. And could you tell me that final pond, you're saying it goes into the DAF first and then into that pond? Or does it come off the top pond at the top of the hill between the road into the DAF and back into those two ponds? And then into the Manawatu?
Later.
Latter. Okay. Sorry, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, cool. Because it's all downhill, the DAF is below the pond, so you're pumping all the time. Okay. Right. So yeah, that's the biggest concern for me is the efficiency or what, because we didn't that's the biggest concern for me, because the last time we met around the table here, it wasn't on the lake. And, you know, I don't want to sing that song, Smoke on the Water, because DC, mate, it'll burn. It's that's dangerous stuff. But anyhow, so that is the biggest, I'll really hopefully see that science coming back quick, because we've only got 20 weeks to nail this. And I hate being squashed at the last, because that's when mistakes get made with good intention. Don't get me wrong. I like the concept. If it's a win-win situation for our Tararua district and ratepayers and our iwi and all of us, because I don't look at everyone, I look at everyone equal, all of us. If we all win, this is good. So we got those points noted, Mayor Tracy? It's really double up on that science is the key one. And I just pleased to hear what size we're actually going to get into here. Because in the scale of things, it's not big. No. So that's what triggers me to think about the cost. You know, maybe we need to look bigger.
If I can just respond, the trend with these solar units is to become more bespoke. You know, the big ones are there definitely, but there's a real trend now for a much more bespoke unit so that you don't have the big blowouts, that they are much more manageable and contained. And that's one of the things that Tūmaira Energy have been specialising in. So schools, community centres, you know, where it looks after itself, enabling self kind of containment, if you like, or efficient.
Yeah, it's just something. It says there procurement of electricity, and then that big word insurance comes in there. Is that insurance going to be on us or on you guys who are taking care of that insurance? Because we've had a bit of that.
If it's to do with the pond, the flotation units and the panels, that's on Tūmaira Energy.
Oh, that's what that step 4. It says Tararua District Council at the top of that bit there. So is that on us or on you?
Sorry, through your worship. So each of us have our own insurance. Tūmaira is the builder of the solar farm, so they will have particular guarantees to the acquiring organisation, which is yourselves as the trust. We will have a contract with the trust, and we will expect the trust to have particular coverage in their insurance as well.
That lines us, or them.
The main,
The document, the bit we've got here.
the main risk is held by Tumaira Energy and then Rangatani Charitable Trust.
Just clarify, Councillor Wallace, I've noted 2 points. You mentioned 3. I've got the science around the anaerobic ponds and the DC, the danger in that. Does that cover?
Sorry, these feet danger is just part of that's just the science. No, that's not a problem. Really, that insurance was the big one.
Thank you. I noted the insurance and have discussed that. Right, Councillor Sutherland, patiently.
Urgency really for me, Tracy. So a lot of the questions I had, Councillor Steve and others, technical ones they had, have answered, because I was like Steve about this. One of the big costs, of course, is why people are putting solar farms near transmission points is because of the cost. But with these bespoke ones, we do need batteries. But there is a solar farm floating on water, but not a pond in New Zealand, isn't there? This would be the first. This is the high. We've got to go. That's Rangatani, and you, Peter, us. That's another issue. We've got to go like hell to try and get a business case approved by MB by March.
Approved. It's already approved.
So what's the March date then?
It's the installation. It's the power.
We're going to build. So
We've moved from venue to venue, site to site. That's been the I guess the hold up, because each different site requires a different scoping around it. Yeah.
So just to follow on from Steve, so that's going to be really challenging, I think. Trying to provide this, the science around this, sticking this on a pond and getting the costs right, be challenging, I'm thinking. But I mean, if there's a blowout in installation costs, what happens? If we have 20% under, 20% over. I've never seen one of these. There's very rarely a project comes under budget, but if it does go over budget, are we as a council up for some costs? But we seem to be, I'm guessing, Peter, there's a very lot of involvement of yours and other people's time in the building on this, which is a cost, I guess. But
We will have to change our standard operating procedures for the site in terms of access. But that's us anticipating what might be required in the future, not necessarily actually having to act on it. That's probably the best I've got, is that there will be some effort that we have to go to change how we perform.
Thank you. Right, I've just got Councillor Johnson back to Councillor Wallace.
One question, how have you established the price that will be charged to council for the power?
I'm going to give you the high level answer because this is an operational matter that's being worked with Tumaira Energy and with the council with Peter. So it's a negotiation that's happening there. The elements of it might be better known by Peter, but I certainly don't have oversight of that right at this moment.
In terms of operational costs, we needed to come up with the solution, which has the elements of the floating, which is interesting because it has to be tethered. All solar panels need to be tethered on the land in some manner. Not a lot of difference there. The floating means that there's a cost saving from construction because you don't have to level the land. You don't have to actually do any site prep work. So there are actually savings, even though the floating plastic
Savings for whom?
For Tumaira, because the business case for Tumaira is that they've got the build costs, materials, labour, overheads,
Yeah, it's the price thinking my own charge council.
but they work out what the cost of this whole install is, then work out what their ongoing operational costs, including insurance, and then they work out what their negotiation position will be in terms of still getting a return for their consumers versus us and our pay and what we pay. So we haven't got to that point. That's why we can't present it, because we're only just settling on the design. We know how much these cost to land in the country, and we know what the labour costs will be to install. We're working out some of the final design elements, which means we will then get a final capital cost, which will then drive what the operating cost will be. And so we can't yet negotiate the price, other than we're making sure that it will be a win-win.
You must have a figure in mind, otherwise you wouldn't be building it.
Yeah.
So the real advantage in this one, through your worship,
To us is on cheaper power. Simple as that. How much cheaper?
And resilience.
So that's one of the action points I've noticed and noted under ratepayer benefit, and that'll be the figure for savings in electricity. So Peter can come back with those. Okay, right, Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. Yeah, that was part of what I was going to ask, because there's we've got the short period of time now, right? We've got the energy cost, which is obviously going to be cheaper. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Otherwise, that would be an insult to all of us. Right? So that's pretty logical. The line charge, because that's $3 a day. You know, you got that all comes into it, and you know, like you look at my power bill, it's gone up 35. The power didn't go up, the energy didn't go up, but to get all the stuff to the thing went up 35% over the last 2 years. But anyhow, that's another story. But the last thing is the one that worries me, and that's the risk thing, is to be this far down, 20 weeks out from turning the switch, and you don't know the science, because at the last meeting we had, it wasn't on the water. That's the only thing that really scares me. That's because this is a completely different case. This is completely different to what we sat around this room with. And I'm passionate about the future and getting better deals.
Your worship, I always had, when we looked at the pond, I always had that in mind, that the UV impact might be a factor. Why it's mitigated is that the UV is now passes through these solar panels. So they're basically clear solar panels.
And I just want to make it quick. You've told us all that. I understand this, the panel and all that, but we haven't got a solar panel farm on a pond, on an aerobic pond somewhere in New Zealand, and they said it dropped down the efficiency of that pond by 20% or 40%, or it actually turned off the lights to the use of that aerobic pond, because we're actually changing an aerobic pond now into a solar panel buoyancy farm. So we're changing the purpose of it, and because you've got to ask the question, they put that aerobic pond there for a reason in the first place, the science. It's just illogical. I'm sorry, it just doesn't, but hopefully you're going to get back to us next week and say, is it going to affect that pond by 20% or 10% or 2%? That's what I would personally like to hear. Simple as that.
But the purpose of that pond was not part of the biological process originally.
You said that it's not. So you're now saying it's not an aerobic pond.
That wasn't its purpose.
No, I'm asking you, are you now saying it's not an aerobic pond?
Will have that effect, of course.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. I've got Councillor Chase, and then sorry, mate.
Sorry, if I could just also respond, since this, we realised that the last site was not going to be happening, we've had experts in this field out and investigating, doing the research. There is a report, I'm not sure, I just tried to write Peter a note to see if he'd seen it. Seen it? Okay, where a lot of this research is presented, so I'm sorry that I don't have it with us at the moment, and I'll make sure you get a copy of it.
You actually we feel.
But we all feel it, truly.
We need.
Sorry, Mayor Tracy, because we need the info, because we can only pass resolutions on the information given to us. And in the past, we've been finding wanting for this information, not just in this field, in lots of fields. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chase.
Just another thing I was thinking about, do we see any unintentional consequences in the local water done well changes in the regulations with this possibility of having the solar farm on our wastewaters, and any consequences with the new CCO that we will be involved in? It's something that I think we need to think about as well.
So it's no different from any other procurement in regard to waters, where the new CCO will take over those procurements of the past of the previous local authority. How that's done is usually through a contractual transfer with the parties willing to do so. It's a bit trickier without DIA and legislative oversight to do that. So we aren't going to have the same protection that the previous government's process had built in. That means each new CCO will have to determine how it's going to deliver the waters and enter into arrangements either with the local authority to continue some aspects of what we currently do before such time as those contracts can be worked through or transferred through to the new entity.
And local water done well, and any considerations into those notes. If I can go to the Chief Executive, so we're on a tight time frame. We've got a list of information that councillors would like. And I guess the question, and obviously Tumaira Trust have put a lot of work already into pre-work into this, so you wouldn't still be sitting there, but just that guarantee of doability to meet that deadline of 31 March for the build. You're needing a decision on this in November, or what was your deadline date for a decision?
So next steps, other than completing the research and making sure that we have our mitigations in place for those aspects. If there's no stop-go problem, that will scuttle the project. There's a consenting process that's now required, a resource consenting process, so 20 working days. The objective date is towards the end of November, so those papers are very close to being completed. These papers are being completed by Tumaira Energy as the builder of the site, and we need to get a number of these agreements in place to allow that to proceed during the month of November.
If I can just add to that, a lot of this is already in train. So Rangi and Tanya are currently working on a CVA, cultural values assessment. I was able to speak with Hayden yesterday, answer a number of his questions, and in principle, I can't talk for him, but the conversation we had was that of support of
things like questions
You've
you
asked around, you know, is there still access to the pond to do repairs, maintenance, and all that stuff. He also wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to be a white elephant left on council books. And to ensure that with the 10-year agreement. So with those things at that point, and as I say, he will, Kahunguna will do their own and submit it, but the conversation we had yesterday was heading in the right direction.
Thanks for sharing that. Councillor Sutherland.
Just a quick comment, Tracy. Just currently, we've got our Three Waters Advisory Group working, and one of the next steps for that group is to sit down and focus on a whole lot of projects that we should do, and that'll come to the council. And one of the biggest concerns really we have across the district now is desludging. And out of this next meeting, well, some direction might come about that, but desludging is a significant problem for this district council and every district council in New Zealand, really. I mean, it is, and it will be, and this is the biggest plant in the district, and this is the highest risk desludging area. So that might need some, I'm not sure what the advisory group are going to do, but they'll certainly focus on it and give it some, put it in the headlights. So that just might be worth some thinking about as well. Both Evie are on this advisory group, of course, so they'll be in touch with it. They're feeding into that directly. Just a comment about that.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. And that's one of the notes or action points I've asked for to bring back is actually a sludge assessment and any mitigation, so we know exactly what we're dealing with. Okay, right, Brian.
Through your worship. So yeah, I think I was just going to mention that a lot of this is still happening in the background, and the purpose of the report today was to provide an update in terms of the change of direction from what was last presented. But even, you know, we acknowledged prior to presenting the report that there was still quite a bit of work to do. I know through Hamish GM Infrastructure, some of his staff are going to be working also with Peter to understand the risks around this in terms of what is it, mitigations around that all. I know Rangatane obviously got their experts into this as well. So there is a lot of information still to come before you make the decision. Today was an update noting that the decision will be made. I'm picking will have to be made at the end of November in terms of but by then, you know, obviously as officers, if it's a no-go, then there probably won't be an item, but or an update to say that due to the risks identified on the pond, that the recommendation would be not to do it. So there's still a fair bit of work to go over the next few weeks to get back, so you can make a good decision around this. But it is moving fast, but certainly there have been things raised. There's issues outside of, you know, similar things that you're raising right now have been raised at an officer level as well. So they are working through those.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Tracy. Just quickly going back, as you've negotiated with the Kuratianas, where was the original land, not Kuratiana, yeah, Manipoita, sorry. And that, where was that going to be in relationship to this 152, in case 152? Where was that, if say if the ponds, if the ponds are not a runner, and you've done all this hard work, logically to me, you'd go and say, well, look, hold on, because of this and this and this, we've got to go this way. Can we have a revisit? That surely must be an option. On that bit of paper there, where would it have been on the first time we sat around this room?
It's the orange bit there by the pond one.
Oh, just there?
Yes. By the driveway and.
Oh, the old landfill, sorry, I missed that when I read the report.
That's not the land one.
No, it's not the landfill.
It's not the landfill.
No, well, yeah, the little orange bit down further down, you see?
The
see how
bigger orange bit.
Yeah, but the other little orange bit too, you see that?
That was the landfill.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, yeah. And sorry, just Question, how many 700 kilowatt hours, you said? So that's 700,000. Yeah, that's what I was going to hope. Thank you.
If I could just make mention, we would never go back to wanting to site it on that piece of land because of the concerns of that whānau. We wouldn't ever go back there.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. And thanks, Mavis, for giving up your time today to come and hear the concerns and be able to answer our questions here. And also thank you for coming for being online. You've done an incredible amount of work on this, and I know that there's many members of the team working on it. So thank you very much, and it's been great, I think, to receive the update, hear those questions, and know exactly what needs to come back to meet those timelines. So I really do appreciate that.
Can I just say thank you very much for the opportunity, and just want to again reiterate, you know, as a partner, Rangitani as a partner to council, we're here to be a partner. You know, this project, we've been funded over $1 million to bring into our community, to work with our community for better. And that's all we're trying to do here. And I appreciate the questions and the concerns. And I just want to assure you that they are certainly the concerns and the red flags that we've had around a number of tables as well, both with our project management team at Tumaira Energy, as well as Peter with us and with a greater team. So just want to thank you all for your time and consideration.
Nice. There's a recommendation on page 149 that the report from the Chief Advisor dated the 23rd of October 2022 concerning the proposed Fenibert wastewater plant solar farm be received. Moved by Councillor John, seconded by Councillor Wards. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors, and thank you for the good discussion and questions on that report. Right, we'll move back to the agenda and we'll just go through till perhaps 11 a.m. and then break for a rest stop unless you want to break now. We'll just pop through the community board and community.
Just a quick one. Did we get a date when we're going to get another chat about this?
The last Wednesday of the week.
Sorry, and I'm presuming that Mavis said that she will distribute that report as soon as that's available. That will be distributed as well. Thanks. Yeah, we've got item 8.1. There is the petition to receive from Beck Smith regarding the Tararua District Council's proposed keeping of animals bylaw. Can we have move that we receive that from Councillor Gilmore, seconded Councillor Chase. Those in favour, please say aye. Okay, carried. Right, on to the Ikarahuna Community Board. Page 34. Page 35. Minutes from Positively Woodville. Those, Councillor Johns and Councillor Gilmore, page 46.
Page 47, page 48, page 49, and page
See? In the annual general meeting, page 51 and page 52, 53.
all we have to do is take the
Right, and the last, Explore Pahiatoa, the minutes from the you're moving those. Right. Okay, moved by Councillor Wallace.
I've got a question.
Okay, well, I'll happily explore Pahiatoa. Can I have a second, please, Councillor Gilmore? Right.
Can I just interrupt, please? Sorry, Your Worship, I have had my hand up. The sound is breaking up really, really badly. I just wonder if there's a problem at your end or is it at my end?
No, and sorry, it must be breaking up badly because I did stop your question. Can you hear me, or is there any one particular councillor that it breaks up on?
No, it seems to be, you're okay at the moment, but it just that the last going through those minutes, it broke up the whole time.
Can I just check in with you, Raj? How's the sound for you?
Your worship, the
just-
sound was okay. Though
Okay.
slight breakup, but I could hear the conversations.
Okay, I'm actually just wondering if that sound breakup was me turning the pages. Potentially. Okay, Councillor Franklin, if that happens again, just raise your hand because that comes up yellow on the screen, so I can see that you're having issues.
Yep, no worries. I did do that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, right, Councillor Wallace, did you have a question on the minutes as well?
Yes, 13.6, that really worries me. On the Pahiatoa community.
I'll tell you what, we'll go page by page and you can.
It's page 70 on your computer.
Page 13.6, the swimming pool.
Yes.
We'll go through and I'll stop when we get to that one again. So page Explore Pahiatoa, page 60. Page 61. Page 62. Page 63. Page 64. Just on page 64, if I could acknowledge and thank you very much, Councillor Franklin, for all the work that you've done on the Pahiatoa Children's 80th anniversary. Just noting that the chair's report there, but I know your attendance at every meeting and there's been an incredible amount of work, certainly well beyond your role as a councillor. But I very much thank you for that. And hope you are well enough to be there and enjoy that hard work and being with the Polish people on Friday. Page
Me
60.
too.
I bet. Page 65. Their meeting from the 2nd of October. Page 66. Page 67. 68. Page 69. And just noting on page 69, there's a couple of comments there regarding the contestable fund, but I think those are discussions that we can have when we get to that paper, just in regards to community board funding and community committees. Page 70, 51, And just noting on page 71, Councillor Franklin, just the toll-free Tararua submission, sorry, the toll submission made by Explore Pahia Tour. I'd love to see a copy of that if that was possible.
I'll certainly ask for it. I'd like to see it as well, to be honest. So I'll get a copy of that for you, Mayor Tracy.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Wallace, page 70, 13.6, the swimming pool.
It scares me. Read it. Yeah, so they've taken that figure as the gross figure, but they really thought it was the net figure because that's the GST content that's come back.
It's a saving. It's a saving.
Yeah, but it's not, no, yeah, but what I'm saying is, did they, well, it's not savings, it's but what did they apply for? More again. So that the net price, I'm trying to figure out what is the net price. Like obviously half their quotes are GST included and half their prices are GST excluded. So in most business cases, it is stipulated at the end of the quote, GST excluded or included. Most business cases are excluded because you can claim the GST. What I'm saying is if you read the whole paragraph there, it's seeking better communication. So who's running the books? Which quotes are inclusive? Which I feel for these guys because they have got no, it was discovered, the quote. Well, they should have asked that at the beginning of when they were putting their business case together of cost.
Positive.
Yeah, no, but it's not. It's the It's the principle we're talking about here. We've seen people in this room decide, oh, no, we haven't put the GST on that. What if it was the other way? It was discovered. I don't like the word discovered. These things should be a firm, established business case. And I feel for these guys because it says there, we are seeking the green light and better communication. So I'm only trying to help these guys.
Councillor Franklin, are you able to shed some light there before I revert to the Chief Executive? And I know Mike Dunn's been working with the team as well.
Yeah, Mike might be actually the better person to speak about it. I spoke with Raylene about this just the other day when I was reading the agenda, and it was only the one quote. For some reason, it was treated as being GST exclusive. It's just an error, but I'm not quite sure on whose part. So I'm sure with Mike having been in those discussions, he'd be better equipped to explain that. Thank you.
It's a fine looking tie.
Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, it was just HMC Construction, as they've stated in there. Their initial rough order quote, they just included their GST figure and they didn't actually stipulate on their final cost either, whether or not it was inclusive of GST or not. So they just had to go back to them and ask, and they came back and we met with them, I think last week or the week before, and they clarified it. So they're happy with their current figure, which is, lower than all the other ones that they've currently got. But
Through your wish, just to add to that, so these were from the original quotes when BAT were still running the entirety of the project. So they did a lot of work with their own project manager, I guess, until council's sort of taken over more recently. So that was just identified when we were re-looking at all of the numbers. That in terms of the total cost of the project, so it's favourable in terms of just clarifying if that price did include. And I'm with you. Generally, it's excluded, but for this occasion, we don't know why they included GST into that price.
They did apologise. It was just an oversight on their part, and to be fair, even though it does work out in our favour, so.
Yeah, that is in this time around. That's great because the net's 5.4 and the gross is 2,100,000. So, 6,201,000. So we got away with it. You get my drift? I just get scared with figures in this room. I've got to say that.
I think the question this whether it's to Michael, to Brian, are you confident in the balance of the figures that they've submitted? Is the question you're asking, Councillor Wallace?
The figures that the construction company have put forward as a rough quote, yes, they are very comfortable with it. They're the ones that have actually established one in New Zealand. They've also done the sprung structure a couple of times. So they've got a fair few learnings that they've used in the installation of that system, and they've got a good relationship with the supplier as well. So that's where some of their cost savings or reductions come into it. So yes, I'm confident, and they are also with what they've currently quoted.
Just to reiterate that these are figures provided to us, not by us.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. How confident are we going to be able to start the project before our consent expires?
Through your worship, we will not be able to do that.
Go more ahead in the queue, and these are that's a good point. These are only Explore Pahia Tours minutes, and I'm not sure they haven't had a meeting since either to confirm that these minutes are a true and correct record of their meeting. Okay, so we've obviously got some further questions. Councillor Gilmore, did you have?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a really quick one through you, probably just to the Chief Executive. Just the comment on there that BAT are seeking better communications from Council. Are we confident that we have a good line of communications with Bush Aquatic Trust and Council? Just want to make sure comfortable.
Yeah, through your worship, I certainly think we certainly do. Mike's obviously got a lot on his plate as well. This is not his only project, and he has met with the trust a couple of times now and provided quite a comprehensive update last couple of weeks. I think one of the challenges will be sort of, and no disrespect to the trust, they're doing a great job, is managing the expectations in terms of some of the timelines where the council must adhere to versus some of them that, they obviously just want to get on with it. We understand that and we acknowledge that, but some of the processes that councils in general have to go through, as you all know, can be slower than what maybe they would do in a private sector.
Thank you. And I was speaking in passing to Raylene Treader, who did say that she was very pleased and they had set some systems and processes up for communicating with council, and that was working well. Councillor Franklin, did you have anything further? I did note your yellow light was on.
Yes, thank you. In fact, you just stole the words because that's exactly what I was going to say. Because the last time I spoke with both her and Louise, they were both really, really pleased with how the relationship was forming and developing. So I took a lot of comfort from that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to make a note as well that while we're just discussing one of the quotes, that yes, we'll still be looking at once all the funding and everything else is confirmed, going to an open market and tender evaluation. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Thank you. Right, councillors, will be 10:55 when we break. If we come back at 11:10, and Right. Thank you, councillors. We're going to move, if we can, and I'm going to bring forward item 10.5, Mercury Energy requests for road stopping on page 155. Amy, have you got everybody you need online, Amy? For that, you've got Ryan there.
So I'm sitting in the back seat there, so we should be good.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. So this report is to follow up on the workshop that we held the other day in regards to Mercury's presentation requesting to stop the road along the top of the Puketoi wind ranges. There's two recommendations, or three recommendations today that we're presenting. One, that the report be accepted. 1.2, that Mercury's Energy's request to undertake pre-consultation with key stakeholders over the proposal to stop the paper road along the Puketoi Range ridgeline within the proposed wind farm area. And 1.3, that the council, subject to pre-consultation, approve Mercury Energy's request to undertake road stopping of the paper road along the Puketoi Range ridge line with their proposed wind farm area, following the process outlined in Schedule 10 of the Local Government Act 1974. With regards to the wind farm proposal, do you councillors want to run through what the proposal is again?
Don't think we need to, no. Yeah. Okay, if you can just give an overview, Ellie has noted that the workshop wasn't in public session, so an overview for the public listening to this meeting would be good, but if you just condense that down.
So, yeah, the overview of the Mercury's proposal is they have consent to develop the wind farm along the top of the Puketoi Range ridgeline, which previously Tararua District Council have supported through the consent process. Following engineering assessments of the site and further development of the engineering plans, Mercury Energy have identified the requirement to relocate some of the wind turbines potentially onto the paper road. This in turn creates complications for the wind farm development. First of all, moving a utility asset into public space is against the roading, I don't know the act purpose of the road. And essentially they're looking to request us to stop the road to ease the process of development of the wind farm. Originally the consent through the council, the approval through the council would grant the ability to gain a license to occupy for the wind farm. And as a result of the changes in infrastructure, they were now wishing to stop the road. Throughout on the workshop held on the 22nd of October, Mercury presented their case for changing from a license to occupy to stop the road, of which has been provided in the summary documents included in the appendix. During the workshop, essentially, it was discussed around the pros and cons of stopping the road, of which Mercury replied that the public benefit is that there'll be further consultation to further benefits presented to the Pongaroa community, Mercury community, as detailed in the background report in section 3. Further to that, is there more questions around the report?
Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I've got two questions with your permission. The first is a bit of a procedural question on the recommendations. 1.3, I just want to double check if we do pass recommendation 1.3, will there be any further consultation required? So it talks about Schedule 10 of the Local Government Act. Will there be further consultation and then will that come to us for a final decision? Just noting in 1.3 it talks about how we, subject to the pre-consultation, we approve the request. I just want to make sure we've got more time after that pre-consultation comes for further discussion.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. Yes, you'll have a second bite at the apple. They will feed back in terms of the pre-consultation, and then under Schedule 10 of the Local Government Act, it then gets publicly notified. So there's a public consultation process.
Thank you, and I'll, thanks very much for the clarification. I thought that was the case, but I didn't want to accidentally have us agree to something without understanding the implications. I suppose my next question is probably not as vital if it's going to be publicly notified and go out, but at our workshop, we did have some discussion about perhaps any other compensation to the Tararua District if the road was stopped, and then also some brief discussions about potentially constructing a new walkway. So what I was wondering through you, Mayor Tracy, is if there has been any other discussions with Mercury subsequent to that, and any other thoughts that might have come onto the table that could be helpful for pre-consultation.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. I think we have begun those beginning preliminary conversations, and they will be developed through this pre-consultation process and the outcomes of that. I think it's a work in progress. Tomorrow we have a meeting for the next steps, and we will definitely be raising these financial considerations to be considered as part of that.
Fine, Mayor Tracy. Thank you very much for that. And so just to really re-clarify my first question, if we haven't had all of those finalised yet, that can be a part of our decision-making process at the end before we formally approve or choose not to approve the road stopping request. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Tracy, yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Sure.
Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Councillor Scott's has grabbed most of my same questions, but the only thing was in respect to 1.3, I didn't think we'd actually really agreed to that during the meeting, agreed that the road stopping, but notwithstanding that, Councillor Scott, I think Amy has given proper reply to that, which is okay. The only thing I'm thinking about, happy with Scott's replies to Scott, but the fact if we approve this subject, if 1.3 will expose to the public that we've approved this, that we are happy with it and out it will go. So the public consultation will be on the basis that subject to their feedback, we're approving it. A little bit of semantics here, but that's not, we didn't really approve it, the road stopping. We had a lot of questions and we talked about financial benefits and shifting walkways and all sorts, but we didn't actually say that. We said, well, let's go to pre-consultation. We're now saying, well, we're okay, we'll approve it, but we'll wait and see. Is that not a tick that I'm just really laying that out for consideration.
Just before I go to Amy, just the clarification, it was a workshop where we looked into the why, so there were no decisions made at that workshop, that's why. Amy.
Yes, through you, Mayor Tracy. I guess as part of the agreement to do pre-consultation, we need to understand that Mercury is investing in terms of doing the survey work. There's a lot of financial money that is required to kick off this stage. So if there is an agreement in principle, subject to pre-consultation, then I guess it makes it difficult for Mercury to proceed forward.
Thank you, Becky. I've got Councillor Chase, Councillor Wallace, and John's along.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor Tracy. I was very similar to Councillor Sutherland, but my other question I would kind of like if you could please define who the stakeholders are for your survey. Consultation with key stakeholders. Who are exactly the key stakeholders?
Through you, Mayor Tracy, the key stakeholders, from my understanding, are the adjoining landowners, both iwi partners, and also touching base with the New Zealand Walking Commission, because traditionally when there is a road stopping, they will be the party that will traditionally object.
Sorry, Councillor Ward's line. I think I also asked Councillor Ward's as a key stakeholder. Thank you for that question, Councillor Chase. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, I just want to try and get that wording of 1.3. I totally agree with Councillor Sullivan. It was like we've put the cart in front of the horse. You know what I mean? So I just want, I reckon that's not the way, that 1.3 is not the way it was talked about in this room. Now, if you said pre-consultation with the public and then the council will listen and go from there, because otherwise it sounds like we're on board. We just got to get the pre-consultation on board and away they go. But I'm not anti-progress, but I'm also, I just want to make sure that it's done in the correct way. And as Councillor Sullivan said, and also Councillor Scott there, that it's just the way it's been presented on there. I'm not happy with the way it's worded.
Rather than debating through there, Amy, if I can just ask you to quickly have a look at 1.3 and check on the wording, and we'll go through the rest of the questions.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying and what the hesitation is there around the community's perception that it's a done deal versus this is pre-consultation on it. Yeah. Okay. So you're happy?
What requirements Schedule 10 of the Local Government Act 1974 actually sets out, because that's what my understanding is saying, that if pre-consultation was available, then we'd proceed to the processes that are set out in Schedule 10, which is very particular about preparing a plan of the road proposed to be stopped, together with an explanation that outlines the requirements for public consultation for that. All those requirements are very detailed in Schedule 10 of what has to happen if you're going to go down that process.
Thank you. So Amy will just have a quick look at that. I'll go through the rest of the questions and I'll add you to the list. Is that okay, Councillor Gilmore, or do you want to say?
I was just saying a quick one-word suggestion that I'm happy to make.
Well, Amy might appreciate that one word now.
Yeah.
And thanks very much, Your Worship. It's just in 1.3, replace the word approve with the word consider. And that also meets the outcomes of Schedule 10 of the Local Government Act, and I think it's a bit more of a true reflection of what we've decided. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Johns.
Scott's comment is probably perfect. I was going to suggest that we delete 1.3 entirely from this motion. It seems irrelevant if we have to go through the process after pre-consultation. There is no point in approving the stopping of the road or indicating that we're approving the stopping of the road at this juncture.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, I think that we need to provide Mercury with some level of support that council is going to consider it. Yes, it is subject to pre-consultation, and it will also be subject to Schedule 10 and the Local Government Act, which will then be publicly consulted on. If there is an objection, it will go through the Environment Court. But if there isn't support in principle, then it makes it difficult for Mercury probably to move forward.
Okay, well, then, as I suggest, Scott's comment of using the word consider is more pertinent.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, I was going to request that each 1.1, 1.2 through 1.3 were going to be separate for voting. And the other couple of things was key stakeholders. Could I request that New Zealand deerstalkers be included in that, and also Ruahine deerstalkers? And the other thing is, could I, for the sake of people listening to this, request what does road stopping mean, and if it is for a period of time? Thank you.
Through you, Tracy, road stopping is stopping the road from being used for public access. So it can no longer be used, you can no longer form a road in that space. And it is in perpetuity, so it's permanent.
Amy Brian's just asked if changing the word consider meets Mercury's requirements today.
You, Mayor Tracy, point just checked. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Tracy, and we have made an amendment to 1.3, and we would suggest a couple of words in consultation with Mercury, that the council, subject to pre-consultation feedback, consider Mercury Energy's request to undertake the road stopping of the paper road along the Puketoi Range Ridge line within their proposed wind farm area, following the process outlined in Schedule 10 of the Local Government Act 1974.
It's just feedback.
Feedback and consider.
Perfect.
Right, councillor Long, you're sure you want these separated?
Yes, please.
Right, so the recommendation 1.1 on page 155. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Gilmore, Councillor Wards, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. 1.2 on page 155. I have somebody move that. Councillor Long, seconded by Councillor Wallace. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Page 155, 1.3, that the council, subject to pre-consultation feedback, consider Mercury Energy's request to undertake road stopping of the paper road along the Puketoi Range Ridge line with their proposed wind farm area following the process outlined in Schedule 10 of the Local Government Act 1974. Moved by Councillor Ward, seconded by Councillor Gilmore. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
Aye.
Assisting in that.
Thank you.
You will.
If they hold it next week, no.
If they are going to hold it,
I can communicate with them.
it would be one. If you could do that, sorry, thank you. Right, thank you. So into reports on 3. The request for funding from the Pahiatoa Museum Society. Ellie, we don't need this paper introduced. Cool. I think Councillor Gilmore, did you wish to speak to it?
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and perhaps make a small amendment to the recommendation. We're on 10.1, right? Just double checking. Just a really quick comment of we passed this we passed a similar motion to this at a recent council meeting where I double checked the amount in that account. So the intent was always to use all of the surplus funds in that account, but we subsequently discovered that there was a small amount of accrued interest remaining. So hence why another paper has been brought. In the recommendation 1.2, it does again list a specific amount, and I note that this paper was written a few days ago, so potentially there may be further accrued interest, and I don't want to end up back here again. So the motion that I'll be moving in 1.2, after the dollar amount of $820.47 will be plus any accrued interest to fully utilise the remaining funds in the Paeatua Heritage Trust account. Just to make sure that we're all completely covered. And with that in mind, I'm happy to move 1.1 and 1.2 with those amendments.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. I just wanted a question, because we can't see the Paeatua town sign with the sign on the side. Is this just like a little A3? Like, how big is this?
Councillor Franklin, can you talk to us regarding the signs?
Yes, I can. Thank you for that question, Councillor Erina. I can't give you the exact dimensions, but no, it's not that little. That's just the original design that was sent to the sign writers in Dannevirke. So they have done it, and what they've done is initially we talked about having one either end of the main street, and the committee decided, the Museum Society decided they would prefer to have one at the south end of town, which is towards the Polish Memorial, with the welcome sign facing outwards, and the reverse on the back side of it, so that as you leave, you see that sign again. So that was making less hindrance on the highway or any way, shape or form. It's not a tall sign by any means, right? It will sit right alongside of the Welcome to Pahiatua Tararua District Land of Rangers sign, hence the design of the flags creating peaks. So when you put those two back to back, you'll get that creation of peaks, which was to kind of line up with the design of our district signs, which I thought was quite clever. So no, it was not huge, but it's certainly not little. That's just a photo. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Franklin. If there's no further questions, we've got the motion with those amendments moved by Councillor Gilmore, seconded by Councillor Sutherland. All those in favour, please say aye. And you've got that motion correctly, Alan?
Not 1.3.
Yes. Yeah, 1.1 and 1.2 with the amendments. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. It'll be very exciting to get both those signs, and having Pahiatua look so good. Councillor Franklin, can I just check that sign will be ready for the reunion on the weekend?
Yes, I think it's actually was put up yesterday afternoon. I haven't been down to have a look because I've been to Croc, so I understand that Jerry Parker and Andrew McKnight were putting it up yesterday afternoon.
Wonderful. I look forward to seeing it.
Me too.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, councillors. Item 10.2, contestable fund process. We've been waiting for this. Welcome. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. So for the most part, I'm going to take the report as read, but I thought I would just provide a bit of background before we dive into some discussions. So after the LTP decision was determined to make the contestable fund, Kimberly and Colin did a lot of hard work looking at what other councils have done in the first instance to understand how they've done contestable funds. That's correct. And it was primarily taken from Hastings District Council and their contestable fund. So that provided the baseline for the process that we were going to follow and the documents used. After getting those, it was then taken in-house, and there was a lot of workshops and collaboration across council to get to the point we're at now, including regular communication to our ELT so that we could bring this forward and get your feedback before we finalise everything. So I know when you look at it, there's a lot in there, there's a lot going on. But that just needs to be there because we'll need that for all of our back end work in terms of receiving the applications, ensuring people have the right application forms, how we're going to notify people, yes or no, what happens from there, how we're going to assess people, the different application streams, whether it's a community grant or an event. So there's a lot that has to go on in the background, but that will be managed by myself and Kimberly. In terms of what council will be needing to do, it would be any eligible applications once the assessment criteria is determined. The assessors, however they're determined, would see the eligible applications score them according to that assessment criteria and that assessment form for each one. And then the idea at this stage was that the panel would then meet to discuss their scoring, make a decision, and then we would be going away to notify applicants, process the payments, and we'd come back and just provide a summary report of the accountability requirements. So for the most part, all of it is just managed internally by us, and then making decisions on who's getting the funding and ensuring you're aware of how it was used and what the success factors were from the events. But obviously this is a new process for council, so we're really open to any feedback or comments and happy to explain as much as we can any of the background decision-making processes that have been undertaken.
Right. So I've got Councillor Johns, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Peter Weber and Councillor Gilman.
I appreciate the work and time you put into this, Grace. But the more I read, and even prior to reading this, I've had doubts as to whether we're doing the right thing by having a contestable fund. Frankly, there's an old adage that's as pertinent today as it was 50 years ago, that the best decisions are made by those closest to the action. Therefore, you should devolve decision-making where possible. This is become a bureaucratic monster, in my view. It's putting up layers of decision-making beyond the respective communities. And it's totally unnecessary, in my view. I know the decision was made to go to this contestable way, but I think that was, didn't quite know how we were going to handle it, and somebody suggested that, and it's got to where we've got now. My view is that I think the funds, that fund should be split as it used to be split between the communities, and leave it to the communities to determine how it's dished out. Get rid of all this bureaucracy.
Okay, so that decision has been made, Councillor Johns, but we
That can be unmade.
not at this point. It was made as part of the long-term plan process and agreed and consulted with our community. So you would need to go through. Not at this point. Yeah, it would have to be an amendment. So, but I think we hear you. We'll move forward, because I don't think that would be the agreement of everybody. Although I understand when you look at this, it looks to be a lot of bureaucracy within that. Yeah. Okay, right. Can I go, Councillor Wards?
Thank you, Worship. I don't want to be a negative nanny on this, but it was in the original discussions that I was certainly very keen to propose a slightly different way of devolving nearly, I think it was somewhere just over $400,000 of ratepayers' money, so that it was spent in the right place with the right organisations, and that there was some accountability and transparency. Suffice to say, when I opened up this document, I got to the end of it, I thought I might need a PhD to be able to do some of this. These are volunteers, organisations that will be reliant on this fund to be able to complete. I appreciate the background now that it's based on the Hastings model. The principles that I would like to have seen applied to this process was that it was simple, that there was a regular opportunity for people to apply, not monthly, not every community board meeting, the way that historically it has, perhaps on a quarterly basis. I would have liked to have seen these organisations do a 5-minute presentation to council. I don't think we need an elected panel of 5 people of Mayor Tracy's choosing. I like the idea of a report upon completion with photos for the record keeping, so that we can look back over every year and be held accountable by our ratepayers on where the money's gone. And I agree that the criteria needs to be adhered to. That's where I've seen some of the unfortunate decisions being made, where even though there are guidelines, the decision makers haven't adhered to them. So those would be some of the points that I would be looking for in this. I appreciate that it was, there is the context behind this, but I think we need to keep it simple, because we're going to have organisations that take one look at this, highly worthy of receiving some form of funding, and they're just going to go far out. So thank you for the opportunity though to comment.
And I certainly don't disagree. I think it does need to be more regular, because there are a lot of opportunities that come up, and communities, when they express interest in running things, they need to be able to know this is open. And I think that just, yeah, having it twice a year certainly doesn't work for our communities. I think that's a real hindrance. Councillor Erin Apeti-Weber.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. Yeah, I concur with Councillor Ward's. I did find it quite confusing, and if I'm finding it confusing, then the general public and our volunteers will find it confusing. But I just wanted to, I didn't realise it was going to be split into 3 different events, like the international, the single year event, and the, what was the other one? A single year fund and the event one. So event, international, and single year. I didn't. So I didn't know it was going to be split into those 3. And what? How are we splitting the amounts? Like, how much is in each one, or is it just? Is that how you're going to take the applications?
If I were talking about the international sports.
Yeah, 'cause when you fill in the application, there was different ones towards the end of the paper. Yeah. And how much is in each?
So in terms of how much is in each, that hasn't been determined. All that was determined or suggested was a $5,000 maximum cap. But that's obviously up to you all to determine whether you want a maximum and what that would be. The reason that they're split into the 3 different categories is so that the application for each of them will just have slightly different questions depending on whether it is an event or a community project, in terms of what we're asking and also what would be reported back. So if somebody was going online to apply under the current system, it would purely just be, are you planning an event or a project or whatever it is? They would select which one they're applying, and the right form would come up through the application system. So that was the only other reason, unless you've got anything else.
Nothing else. It's just about creating the correct pathways into the ultimate bucket. We haven't proposed at this stage to create selected amounts for those pathways. It was really about the information that we're gathering from the applicant on the way through the process, and depending on what they are doing, we do need different levels of information.
Do you have other questions, but Brian?
Through your Bishop, I think the intention with this is that it's a new process, and Kimberly obviously does this as a job. She helps out community groups with applications to various funding sources and helps them through that process, whether that be to DIA or other funders as well. We're not trying to present something perfect right now. I think, like any new process, there'll be a time when we've got to test and reevaluate and approve it. I think what you're seeing, and I agree, is it looks like quite a complex beast with a lot of channels. It's not necessarily what the end user will see either, and I think that's why Kimberly will be able to help those that go through the process if they can't, because it will be online. And no disrespect, Councillor Ward's coming in here and presenting for 5 minutes in front of a full council may be quite intimidating for some groups as well, where they'd quite happily just do it online and then it goes through the process. And when a panel or whoever evaluates it, you know, that they will fill that in, and certainly online they'll be ticking a few boxes, providing some information around it to give them a bit of, so we may not have the polished product right now, and there may be some testing and evaluating that needs to go on, but the intention is to make it as simple as possible. What we're providing you, though, is all the information that sort of does sit behind it as well. But at the end, our goal was to have it as simple as possible for the end users without overcomplicating it for them.
I'll allow Cara to, you can come and make one comment, but I probably have some different views even to that. So I'm happy to hear from you, but then I will go through the rest of the questions. And I don't think that we're in a place.
Through you, Tracy, if I can just offer my 2 cents to simplify it, what you have is everything from A to Z, so the entire process. The idea was that we do all the work. So for an applicant, what they have is a website that they log in and do an application form online, as simple as that. For the panel is you get only the applications that are eligible according to the criteria which you will determine. So what you get really is a list of eligible applicants. You don't get the whole lot. So really the intention is that it is as simple as possible for the decision makers and for the applicants, and we do all the work behind the scenes.
Okay, so I'm just going to go on, Councillor Gilmore, you've got some questions there. Whilst I understand that, it is some parts of the community actually enjoy the opportunity to come and talk about their projects, and that does give some insight. Just a couple of comments from me. You know, the $5,000 limit that's been suggested, that wouldn't cover a traffic management plan for a Christmas parade. So I think that there needs to be some discussion in that. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. And first of all, thank you to the team for the significant work that has gone in. It's really clear that there's been a huge amount of time and effort that's gone into producing all of this. However, I am in agreement with colleagues, and I did sort of try and follow this through as an applicant, and I'm someone in a different part of my life that has to go in and apply for funds for a charity. So it's not too dissimilar to other funds, but what really jumped out at me, and I think that's sort of been encapsulated a bit more with some of the comments, is the huge amount of administrative work that will go on behind the scenes. And that does concern me a little bit. And absolutely, we want to take some of the pressure off people applying, but I don't want to be adding, I don't want to be adding huge staff resources to being able to manage it. So I have quite a bit of sympathy with Councillor Johns' comment, and I'll make a further comment about that at the end, if that's okay. Looking at it as it stands with some of the eligibility requirements, it was never my intent, and I don't think it was ever anyone else's intent, to limit or disallow community boards or community committees to apply for funding. So that certainly jumped out at me. We have made a decision as a council in the long-term plan to reduce their funding and to reduce funding. Part of the contestable fund process, I mean, these are groups that by their very nature are driving projects within our community. If they have a project that stacks up, absolutely I'd like them to come in and apply to the contestable fund to try and get that over the line. So that was one part. It's already been mentioned, the only having 2 cycles per year. I don't think that that is going to be workable, or it's certainly not ideally what I would prefer. If we do that, I think we need to at least have the provision for outer cycle applications. And I do think, particularly of international sports people, that they might not actually know 6 months out. They might have missed the cutoff. They may need to get that moving quite quickly. We had a report in here today of a group that got funding, but we're needing to make decisions really quickly before deadlines are hit. That can absolutely happen with funding as well. The other bit that I had a bit of concerns with, this is sort of the eligibility part, was limiting groups to 1 application per year. And I had a couple of issues with this in particular. One, we have reference within the paperwork to using umbrella, like using an incorporated society as an umbrella group. Let's just say that umbrella group allows an individual to, they make an application on their behalf, then that potentially would count them out to do their own project. So, I think absolutely understand we want umbrella groups, but that could be a problem. The other bit is some of our groups have more than one worthy project per year. And if they do have a worthy project, I think that we should absolutely consider it. In the criteria, it specifically talked about international travel being kind of deprioritized, I think the wording was, or whatever it was looked at. We need to make sure that we keep that international travel fund purpose going. Other quick comment was the panel of 5. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think if we did do that, though, there would have to be a stipulation that it would be 2 councillors from the north, 2 councillors from the south, plus the mayor. There are some options for doing this. I mean, I'm conscious of full council time. A lot of councils have grants committees. That could be something that we look at with a small group. The other advantage of that, we've already gone through a grant in the paper directly before this one. All of those things could just funnel into a grants committee. Something to consider. But going back to, I suppose, where we started, to Councillor Johns's comment, there could potentially be a way that we could have a contestable fund that was decided by a community committee. So we could still meet the obligations that we had or what we consulted on, still have the overall overarching process, but there was part of that funding in each town that was decided on using the criteria that was set by the community committees or community boards. That goes somewhat to Councillor Wards's comments of just sort of sitting there doing things without any criteria and just different sums of money going, not having accountability. So I know that was quite a lot, but I do think that there needs to be some changes before this goes out and goes public, so we get the best possible outcomes for people. Your worship.
Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. Councillor Johns.
Worship, yes, it's interesting that this is a take from Hastings, which is one town. We've got 4 towns, and that's there in itself is a difference in the way to handle things. See, even in the Hastings criteria, community boards and committees, community committees that already hold separate council funding are ineligible to apply to this fund, which suggests that in Hastings, community committees or boards are funded by council anyway. And this is a fund, this contestable fund that they have is over and above the funding for community committees or boards. So yeah, I maintain my original statement. I really think it needs a complete tossing out, and whatever we need to do to do that, do it.
Thank you for allowing me to talk. So I'm probably one of the only officers here that have some experience with these contestable funds. In Wanganui, the process was that officers would do all the work behind the scenes, and as an operational, and it is, to be fair, an operational part of council in terms of going through funding requests. We've tried to be quite transparent and bring it to council, because we sensed that there needed to be a level of involvement from this council, and that was sort of the feedback we got through the previous hearing. So we presented something that we would do the work, and then it would come to council to actually make decisions. We can do all the work behind the scenes and simplify the process and widen the criteria. That's not a problem. I'm just conscious of the amount of work that we'll keep doing this for, and it's $100,000 contestable fund. And we'll do a lot of work to get that to where it is now, and going forward, if we're to rejig it, we'll come back March. We're almost finished the financial year. So my point is, for this year, we need to get through the year in terms of having a contestable fund so these groups can apply. My suggestion is that we do the work for this year around providing something quite simple to the community. And then as we did in Wanganui, we brought that back to the council for endorsement. So you'll get each and every one of the applications in front of you with the amounts and basically the decision making. Council then has the opportunity to go, no, we think they only need $3,000, not $6,000, or yes, they need $8,000, not $5,000. So that's the process we run, and it came back to full council. And if there was changes, and some of them would be, no, we don't agree with that assessment, go back and tell them no. So I'm thinking to get through this year, maybe we just keep it quite simple like that for now, and then present something a little bit more in depth, maybe future years, or it might be something we can iron out going forward.
That sounds good. Councillor Sutherland and Councillor Petty-Weber.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. I think I'm completely in favour of what Brian has said. I think there's a reason we got to this, and it was about the money. And I think really it was about the amount of the money. I think we do need to keep it a bit simple. I was thinking, Councillor Scott talked about the cut-offs. There are pros and cons of both things. Having cut-off dates gives community groups some surety of when they've got to do things. But that could probably find its way through for the first 12 months as well. So I would think I'm like Brian, let's get this going, get the money going and review it. Let's just see how much work in-house, how it's sat with councillors for the first 12 months.
Councillor Petty-Weber.
Sorry, just quickly. I was just thinking about the international fund. I had made a note on here. So we had our previous international fund for sports. People going overseas was 500 was the maximum, and we're going to jump that to 5,000, which is probably too much. And what was the other one? Oh, unspent funds. I probably would. Yeah, I didn't really like that one. Probably needs to be returned, not just used on anything. That's in the paper as well. Thank you.
Councillor Wadley.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. Great bit of work. It did keep me up at night reading. It was good. But I think I can see what we're trying to do here, which is a good thing, because change doesn't hurt anybody. The old saying, there's not much, the only difference between a grave and a rut is the depth. So here, I'm thinking, because there's some people out there, get their funding and probably don't need it because they've got a lot of other assets or bits and pieces, and it'll just change the way they think. Once the form's been filled out in whatever form that's coming or finishing up as, right? And it's going to be simplified by the feeling I get around the room. People, I think, will honestly look at this. It's like, I don't think change hurts anybody. And we're in this financial constraints now. So we've only got that amount of money. Some people will, who want to, we'll put it this way. If you have to fill out a bit of paper, which is all it is in the end, and it's online, and you want to do it, and you want to get there, you'll make someone. Why I say that, I think of people that knows Weber. There's a lady out there who knows how to fill out forms, and she's got lots of stuff because she filled the forms. She's a professional form filler, and the Weber Hall's got air conditioning curtains. So it's not as if it can't be done. And also opens it up. But how the end product is, I'm not quite sure if we're quite there yet. And I mean that constructively, all right? But I'm all in favour of change. Otherwise, we've done a lot of work in this room and sent a lot of people off to do a lot of work, and we've got to change. Otherwise, yeah, we're back in that rut.
Thanks, Councillor Wallace. The comment that I've got on here as well, just around, I guess, making this complicated, but we've asked people to sign a declaration. Now, and as part of that declaration, it talks about being fully compliant with all applicable legislation, including the Vulnerable Children's Act, to safety check volunteers and staff if applicable. You know, that is a very big process, and if you're asking every applicant to sign something like that, so I agree that I think we've overcomplicated this for what we were wanting for the community around accountability and that. So that one there does give me some concern, and I only say that because we've just been through that with Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, and understanding that. I think I did email the Chief Executive a question even around council in regards to that. So it's a big ask for communities to meet that, and it's not a free, it's not a free cost either to get all of those police checks done. But if you're asking every applicant to sign that, which it looks like it is in this one, I understand that that's probably just come through from Hastings, but just need to give some additional thought for that. So with regards to the recommendation, can I just check in with you, Brian? So we'll receive the report, but the proposed process here won't be approved. The determination of the 5 panel members, as decided by the Mayor, I'm quite happy that this comes through. I didn't want to create any additional workload or prep, if councillors are coming. I was quite happy for that to come through a council meeting. If people want a separate panel, I guess it's just, we really do want to keep this as simple as possible, but also as transparent as possible. People like to know and understand how a decision's made. So I'm open on that one, councillors, if there's a better method. The funding rounds, I just thought the 2, it needs to be more than 2 funding rounds. So, yeah, Brian or councillors. And 1.5, the council provides guidance as to the requirements for applicants and full funding amount is not used. Yeah. There's very few organisations that do directly give it back. The other question that I do have is if the fund is not fully utilised in the 12-month period, we've rated for it, can those funds be carried over? No, so they've got to be used. Yep. Okay. Brian.
So through your worship, my suggestion would be for this year that we have a simplified process in terms of that we go out publicly, that it's open. We just leave it open until the fund's exhausted. And then we, prior to, the problem with that, I guess, is that we would need to have a process for approving those. So if we get one every week, and if we say that council's finally going to approve it, but we do all the work sort of in between, we would have to bring a bunch of them to every council meeting. I don't think that's a problem, actually. That might work well. And then once the fund's exhausted, we close it. But each applicant will know that it will go to the nearest council meeting and we will present a list of the funder. And I think I've got to check whether or not this is done confidential or public. I can't remember, but it will be. Yeah, it's just whether or not there was financial details, but yeah, probably is public. And then we'll just provide a real simple, with a view that we'll work on tightening things up for the future year, where we will learn a lot as we go through this current process as well, with a view that it comes back and we're ready to go 1st of July for whatever council decides during the annual plan. 1st of July, we then go whatever, and it might be that the simplified process works perfectly fine. And I think then we look at what can be improved for the future year. I'm just real conscious that, we're getting a bit tight around timeframes in terms of this process for this year, with view that we can make a better decision in the annual plan process, maybe, but ready to go on July.
So if I could, I'd just like to see clarification on a couple of points. Is there, okay, a few of them are, do you want a funding cap per funding application? So do you? So no whatsoever.
Sorry, and the reason being is that council will have the ability to go back or forward depending if they think, yeah.
The second question, in relation to the community boards and committees, the recommendation was put in to exclude them given they do get council funding already. And with the fact that this is a much smaller pool of money compared to what's historically been provided to communities, the idea was that applicants who don't have access to any funding would be able to access this smaller pool compared to community boards and committees who do already have funding. So is that something you would like to open up to community boards and committees, or would you rather leave it open to people who don't have access to any other sources of funding?
We need to suck and see, really, don't we?
We don't have to approve it.
No. Sorry, it's not the right language, I apologise.
And then from what I'm understanding in terms of when we're talking about simplifying the process, other than the comment from you, Mayor Tracy, on the accountability question, which we can definitely look at removing, is the simplification seems to be, from what I'm understanding, more about how we're doing it in terms of presenting options to council and the assessment of applicants rather than what the applicants are seeing, or is the problem also that you see these forms as asking for too much information? Because there's always going to be an inherent decision between asking for more information and being able to make more informed decisions versus making it simpler, and then we're not getting that information to present a recommendation to council on.
Thank you, Mayor. For the International Travel Fund, you know, those applications, normally when you're selected at that representative level, they will give you a breakdown. I think some of the questions in relation to that were quite hard in comparison to those people who have very little choice. It's all, you know, it's all set out for them. This is what you need, this is where you're going, this is where you're staying, type things. So that would be my only comment around there. And just for that one, I think was my only one that I can have a look at the others. Anyone else has got anything?
No.
Yep, Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, you may, Tracy. The only thing I'm trying to clear up is the people that got funding normally as a give me, right? Do they all know now, I know we talked about it, but some people that didn't quite get through, that they all have to apply to this contestable fund now. All the historics is off the board, because that was our initial goal set, wasn't it? To get rid of the historics and sweep the broom, clean the floor, and start off fresh. That was the whole intent of this, wasn't it? Pretty much, yeah. But yeah, so that I'm just making sure, because that's our only intent here, is trying to get the best amount of money to the right people, the most needed. Yeah. Without confusing the hell out of them. Yeah, thank you.
Just in relation to the international representation.
Sorry.
In relation to the international representative scheme, can you please just mention that that's basically a replication of what's already been in place?
They don't have the timelines. So normally when they come in, so the one that there's been two that have come in, they'll normally get between 4 and 6 weeks. That's all the time that they get. So that was one of the notes. I just had a look at my form now to see the notes that I put on it. So it's a very tight turnaround for those players. Yeah. Right. So I think Brian's been working on a recommendation. Thank you, Brian.
So through your worship, what I propose is that maybe the 1.3, 1.4 1.5 replaced with that council leaves us with the chief executive to provide a simplified process for the remainder of the 2024-2025 financial year. So that's 1.4 or whatever number. Oh, sorry, I'll leave the numbers out. Ali can. That final approval for this process is brought forward to the nearest council meeting for approval, something like that. So that's, we would, yep, council.
Got the community wellbeing.
Or the nearest council meeting.
No, it's just, okay.
So then you go to 1.2, third statement. The one word simplified process.
And then the final one, working group will be established with a mix of elected members and officers to finalise the process for the 2025-2026 financial year.
I'll see you next.
So we've got Councillor Gilmore moved, Councillor Long seconded, but can I get you to read that back, Ali, just so that everybody is very clear?
Council leaves this with the Chief Executive to provide a simplified process for the remainder of the 24-25 financial year. That final approval for this process is brought to the nearest council meeting for consideration. A working group be established with a mix of elected members and officers to finalise the process for the 25-26 financial year.
Everybody down and something. All those in favour, please. Carried. Thank you so much. It's always tough when you
are setting something new in place for both council and the community to understand and make sure that the intentions all align. So we really do appreciate all of that work, and especially with things being so tight within the community and the funding space. One of the commonalities that I'm hearing back is that funding is really tight for those organisations out there. That's where that transparency and people wanting to understand those decisions is really being driven from. So really appreciate that, and it's good to understand that from Hastings too. I'll have to have a look how much they had.
Yeah.
So, I just check in council awards of 120. What we might do, councillors, break for lunch now and come back in at 1:45. We'll break for 30 minutes and come back in. Okay, thank you. So we'll adjourn. move that. Right, welcome back, councillors. Thank you, councillors. We will keep moving through the agenda. So if we can go to item 10.3, the existing Tararua poll. Welcome. You're online and can hear Councillor Franklin.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, councillors. So I'll take the report mostly as read. I know that we've talked and discussed the Paihetoa pools and the existing pool a fair amount. I suppose the only couple of parts, I'm happy to jump into the discussion that there is, but the way that I would look at it anyway, and as per the recommendation, is that there are a low cost of the repair. There is currently also some uncertainty still remains around the funding of the current or the new pool, and that we won't have any sort of like financial understanding, should I say, for that funding applications to the end of this year. So with that and just service this pool and make sure that it's actually operational and minimal leakage.
Couple of questions before we'd go there. Councillor Johns, Councillor Gilmore, then Councillor Wards, and Councillor Wong.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and certainly don't want to hold things up. I did just want to ask though, I know when we were having our long-term plan conversations, we made a decision not to put more money into the pool. I was absolutely delighted to see that it was, a small amount of 3,500, but as happy as I was to see that, I was quite surprised that it was such a small amount. My understanding when we were having those discussions is it was potentially going to be a lot more. I think you've explained some of that in the report, that it is quite minor work. Do we have, you sort of mentioned about uncertainty, do we have sort of a level of confidence that we won't have significant water loss if we are just going to be spending the 3.5? I'm happy with the 3.5. I'm not happy though if that then we find another problem, another problem, and another problem. So I just want to get a little bit of confidence that 3.5 grand is kind of what we'll spend. We're not necessarily going to jump out and spend a whole lot more.
Through you, Your Worship, there's currently no intention of it doing that. Currently, if we were to repair the minor leaks that there are, we'd have to just review it at the end of the season and see how it goes. We talked originally as well about full relining of the pool and all these other sort of pieces of work. It may still continue to develop some leaks just based on the wall structure, but yeah, we'll just have to review that as it comes, but we can do something similar if this is the course version you'd like for that pool, especially considering yeah, that's exactly it. We're not looking at doing all the other works that were considered at that point.
Happy to second that when we get to that point.
Thanks, Your Worship. Similar to Councillor Scott, but curious to understand, for that amount of money that isn't in the LTP, what do we have to do? It is in the LTP? I'll happy to second the motion then, you.
Councillor Long.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. So have they identified where the leak is?
Yes. Thank you.
So I'm curious to know, would this fix the pool to be to keep instead of having to build a new one and put more money into that?
Through you, Your Worship, no. It will be enough to get it through the season. Yes. Still more the other parts that we needed to consider, like the sand and the filter needs to be replaced. There's issues as well that that they're currently working through with, so the dosing system, and there's all manual other work that's required that we would look to upgrade if we were to. Ideally as well, you would line the pool rather than just keep patch repairing it as we are.
So is this fix just for the season, or is it something that we're going to continue to do until we have the new pool?
It's just for this season. We can review it again after.
Councillor Franklin and then Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question, Mike. I did actually ask the swimming pool committee how this was able to be done at such a low cost, and they gave me a really good explanation of what you've done to find this better way, more cost-effective way of doing a temporary fix. Are you able to explain that to the councillors? Because I think that will add a lot more clarity. I actually sent the explanation through to Councillor Scott so he could see it. Once I'd read what Carolyn Donald said, I could understand it. Perhaps that might just give a greater understanding. Thank you.
Yes, through your worship. They essentially just conducted dye testing so that we could, when there was water in the pool, they along the wall sides and surfaces, they injected a dye that they were able to identify where the cracks were. So those areas were identified. We also used the pool at that time as well to run another quick trial of our underwater drone to also have a look around and identify those as well and look at those areas. So that's also part of that. Those are the areas that we would look to fix.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Tracy. Yeah, I was really disappointed to see this on the table again, because as you can see, I'm not anti, as it says in 3.6 option 1, new pool proceed, and I can remember it clearly as daylight in this room, and nil able to, and no works complete to existing pool, no work. Okay, and it was passed by Councillor Franklin and Councillor Long just above there. And they pleaded that, look, we're putting money in it, we're just pouring money into a hole. And it made good sense what they were going to do and the encouragement and everything. So the council put it to the vote and the money was so forth. The system was put in place to produce a new pool. I'm a little bit worried. Well, I'm very worried because you didn't give it a definitive answer then. At this stage, this is what we might just need, but I don't know the future. So you didn't say, right, the end of this term, we don't have an end date on any of the discussion. So are you, and now there's new technology. Well, you beg to ask, why wasn't that technology used in the past? You know, was it new technology or just technology not sourced? Because the next thing I can guarantee you is the filter will go, this will go, that'll go. Where is the stop of this pool start, which we already decided it had it stopped at the previous meeting? Now we're starting it again. I'm thinking maybe there's another way to look at this. There are other pools in the area which could be used. Go and have a word. It's only for 10 weeks. I'm against it. No more money.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Brian's just got one comment and then I'll share one.
Yeah, through your worship. So the discussion and decision back at the LTP was a little bit more than that. It was that officers would go and find other options to provide pay to those that use the pool, with other options as well, like providing potentially a van and providing other aspects to get them to a pool free of charge. So there was always going to be a cost element of what we've done through a bit more research and a bit more investigations into the current pool. At a minimal cost, less than what we would have spent on potentially on the alternate, we've brought back the option that we could get through this season at $3,500, noting that what you said around filters and all that fail, yes, they will fail, but we're confident won't be over that 6 to 10 week period. So the decision is council, because you are right, you made a decision not to do any work, but we're just presenting another option that will benefit both the community and the ratepayer, because it's only going to cost $3,500. But and as I said, that's entirely over to council though.
Thanks, Brian. Councillor Franklin, and I guess if I just make one very quick comment, you know, bringing back information and new information is always good, as opposed to being hard and fast. And I think that there was some sound information. It was with a new piece of technology that we now own to base that on. Councillor Franklin.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. And just to answer you, Councillor Steve, I totally had exactly the same feelings and responses as you did. However, the brief was quite different because we were thinking, well, I was certainly thinking at the time last year when this was passed as part of that LPTP discussion and decision, that it was going to be around the 40,000 again. And that's what I was really against. So when I saw the figure, I thought, well, how did that happen? How did it become so simple? So I went straight to the horse's mouth and spoke to Carolyn Donald, who is basically the whiz of that pool, and got that information. And I spoke to Councillor Scott about it too, and I sort of said, well, this is actually quite a different ball game to what we had expected when we made that decision. Just to be fair and transparent, it's a tenth of what I thought that they were meaning it would cost to get the pool open this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Franklin. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. A large part of what I was going to say has been covered. I do absolutely have sympathy for what Councillor Wallace was saying. Councillor Franklin's right. When I saw that first come up, I'm like, what is going on? I think I'm the one that said and moved that motion that we don't put anything extra into it because I didn't want more money going into a leaking hole. However, $3,500 is quite substantially different to 30 or 40,000. And so my question was, and Brian covered it a little bit, but I just really want to, I guess, hone into this a little bit more. Is it likely that if we didn't go ahead with this, that we would spend more than $3,500 on alternative options like transporting children and people to other pools? So is it likely that if we as a council said no to the recommendation, that actually it would cost our ratepayers more in finding alternatives and transporting them around? To me, it seems likely. I just want to get a clarification.
Yes, very likely it will be more.
Councillor Wallace.
After hearing what, through you, Mayor Tracy, after hearing what Councillor Ellison just said, fine. But I would like to make sure we've got an end dot. By an end dot, I mean $3,500's gone. They fix it with this new technology, which has miraculously appeared. Because I can't believe it's only 365 days ago that they weren't doing that type of research. That if it has a blowout in the filtration stuff or whatever, because that's the other thing, it's $3,500 today. Next minute the filter goes, next minute the pump goes, next minute that goes. Are you asking for each time it goes, where's the stopping point? Because, and then you've got to go and get the buses and still ship them around somewhere. All I want is a definitive answer, $3,500, and then that's it. We need some certainty. Otherwise, it's just an open-ender.
For your worship. So here the item in front of you is asking, well, it's not even asking for $3,500. It's already part of the budgets that we run. What we're asking is that effectively it is going back on the previous decision of the LTP, which was no further funding. So there's no additional funding we're asking for.
The principles changed.
All we're saying is due to more information we've brought back to say. Now, can I say that we would never come back to council to put money into pay to a pool? I think there's still a few other, we're not there to say that yet. I think that will come at a later date in terms of how we progress with the pay to a pool, and Mike's mentioned that before, where we'll have some of the finalised budgets around that towards the end of the year. So things are still slightly up in arms in terms of where we're at, and in terms of any full commitment. Yeah, I'd love to say, yep, we're cracking on with new pool and no more money spent on pay to, but I don't think I can say that today.
So just supplementary to that, that's what I think this whole table wants, is dates. As Naomi said, Councillor Naomi said, about if we're going to carry on and on and on, and same as myself. Will we have a date before Christmas that the new pool's starting? Will we have there must be work going on, but we don't know in this room. Well, I sure don't, unless somebody's been holding back on me.
No, we've not been holding back on you, Mike. And I guess there will be a report come through around the new poll, if that's what you're querying. Mike is actively working with Bush Aquatic Trust. The other part that I just wanted to touch on is when you talked about the drone and that miracle. That's when we purchased the drone for use, and correct me if I'm...
the dye, not the drone.
Yeah, but they've so the dye, they team did that themselves, as opposed to bringing somebody, a specialist in to do that.
Yeah, no, it's nothing different with the drone. It's the dye. I thought that was a brilliant idea. Well, why didn't they do that 10 years ago?
Your worship, so Mike has been reporting on the pay to a pool through the capital projects updates. So you have been getting updates regarding that. The funding largely still lies with the Bush Aquatic Trust. So there's two elements here. One is the project management, but we can't progress with the project fully until there's certainty around the funding. So in terms of dates, we're not in a position to give dates until we have more certainty about the funding going forward.
Scott, Councillor Franklin, is that your hand raised again, you now?
No, sorry, Your Worship, I forgot to take it down.
Okay, just checking. Councillor Wallace.
Well, in saying that then, if that's the case, why was that comment made in the Explore Paitoa? Why was that in there? There's no communication between council and them. What is the update on that?
So that was firstly, that's their minutes and their expectation of communication, which I understand they've got a plan in place working with Mike so that they've got clear lines of expectations on both parties. Would that be correct, Mike?
Yes.
Councillor Gilmore, and then I have got a second on.
Sorry, just really quickly, as those minutes were brought up, because I mentioned that as we came through. Don't want to speak for Councillor Franklin, but she did mention at the time that she had spoken to those committee members and said that communication had vastly improved. So as Your Worship mentioned, you had had a similar conversation. So I think maybe there was a perception, but everyone seems happy, which is very good.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you, Your Worship. The expectations have been challenging to manage, let's put it that way. But it is something that we've been working through. Unfortunately, though, the Paitoa Pool report comes through every 2 months, so you wouldn't be as up to date on these projects that come through monthly, because it goes to the community planning not being complete. Just working on finalising that particular report. So definitely we'll be up for a full update, and I guess another round of questions or debate.
And as that poll gets, gets closer, the reporting will continue to change. Right, we've got a mover from Councillor Johns. You're still happy to move that, and second of Councillor Gilmore. 1.1 and 1.2. Councillor Gilmore, you're happy to second those. All in favour, please say aye. Against?
Yes.
For Trace and Councillor Wallace recorded against. Motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Right, we're just going to skip very quickly ahead if we can, because Woods does need to leave. If we can go through to item 10.8 on page 295. The appointment of councillors to community boards. Ellie, do you want to present this, or I'll just take this report as read?
We need to declare conflict of interest on this one, or
So we'll just take this report as read. If anyone's got any questions, you are welcome to ask them. By Councillor Wallace, seconded by Councillor Chase. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. And I would just like to thank Councillor Woods and Councillor Gilmore for their service to both those boards as full members and the diligence that you gave those roles. It wasn't what I had envisaged, wanting to give that extra support, but just with that workload, and it has been an incredibly heavy workload, I acknowledge both the travel, the commitment and the time that you put into them with a very grateful thanks.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, I'd like to just commend Sharon on her work as both councillors on that community board. They went there with good intent. They weren't the enemy, as a good friend of mine said at that meeting. They both had good intent from this council to help them. So it's sad, but yeah, and probably would have, I don't know about Councillor Scott's position, but yeah, Councillor Ward, very well, and same, especially with Councillor, our Deputy Mayor too, Irina. Good work, and as you know about what's in that report, good effort. Thank you very much. I just want that noted.
Councillor Long.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. Concerning Councillor Gilmore, I do know, and his contribution to Eketahuna Community Board has been excellent, and brilliant presentation, and his knowledge and skill getting it over to other community board members has been excellent. So he's done a very excellent job. Thank you.
apologies, Your Worship. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Wards. Safe travels. Right, councillors, moving to page 255, item 10.6. The waste management and minimisation plan.
Councillors, this is the final step in the waste management minimisation plan adoption. As you'll recall, we've been through the process of consultation, reviewed the consultation, and noting that there wasn't any changes to the document following that. A lot of the submitters brought up things that we were working on, and very little need for change in that space. So happy to take it as read, and happy to take any questions on the final output if you like.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. I'd probably move that shortly, but I just want to say that I think the whole process has been very, very well handled. A lot of work from yourself and Joe, particularly. It's been a long process with this one, hasn't it? But it's ended up here very effectively, and I think the positive recommendations from a few submitters, which was good. But I just want to say too, just really being specific to Dannyvik. Actually, I've just been using the Dannyvik dump, refuse station, transfer station, whatever, in recent times, and in all my decades here, I've never seen the place look so good. Culture of the staff so good, and it is a credit really to to the team at the moment, and I just thought that again on Sunday when I was there. But wasn't just the look of the place too. It was obviously the staff cultures just improved out of sight. So it was really good to see. You could hardly see a bit of flapping paper. On a busy day of the last Sunday, there was a bit of stress here with a lot of cars. It was just handled so well. So just a bit of kudos into an area of a lot of criticism in the community at different times. So that was me. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that, because it does look very, very good down there, and the team have an incredible pride in the service that they provide and the way that it looks. So that's really good if you can take that back to the team as well. And I know from a personal experience that they're very fair in the way that they do that. And they did think the chief executive was driving through the weigh station without paying, and he was duly stopped.
He went, "Oh, it's so low." She went, "What?" She went, "What's the run on the leverage?"
Very embarrassed CEO.
I'm very embarrassed near him because that's just.
They thought he was going to do a runner. So, thank you. I just wanted to highlight before we carry that, and I think this is an important document, and something that really should be at the forefront of our minds, because when I read where we are now, the Tararua District sent nearly 6,000 tonnes of waste to landfill last year, 311 kilos per person in Tararua. Nearly half of this waste was made up equally of timber, food and garden waste, two materials that shouldn't go to landfill. Most of these materials could instead be used for a range of other purposes. Overall, half the waste we send to landfill could have been recycled, composted or reused in some way. Most of the waste comes from households, either rubbish collected at curbside or taken to one of the transfer stations, and nearly half of that rubbish collected at curbside is food or garden waste. We are above the national standards. It's something that we need to absolutely have a focus and work on. So I commend you for the work and know that that passion and dedication is there. And I look forward to some improved results through this plan. Councillor Johns.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Just a question, Joe. That green waste that's going into rubbish bins, is that mainly lawn clippings?
Green waste into the general. People can put the green waste in a general waste bin, but they don't need to. It's cheaper to get rid of it as green waste. It's a quarter of the price if they brought it in the transfer station. And we compost it if it goes into the green pile. But yeah, generally they get the option. If they've got green waste and rubbish, we just need them to weigh separate. So if they weigh the green waste first, go and unload it, then they need to come back and weigh rubbish. Yeah. I don't see a lot of piles of green.
It's only open for 5 minutes a week, and there's no weighbridge.
Would you like to submit a thing to open it longer?
That may well be the case in Paetua, that option doesn't exist elsewhere necessarily. So that's why I ask how much of that, say in Woodville, is the likes of grass clippings and garden clippings and so on.
Yeah, not so.
Just going into a rubbish bin.
Not so much grass clippings. Yeah.
In the discussion during the annual plan again.
There's a green waste pile at Woodville as well that gets composted. There's a green waste pile at Woodville as well that gets composted.
Right. Thank you, Councillor John. Moved by Councillor Sullivan, second by Councillor Wallace. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Well done. And please take those comments back to the team. Item 10.7, regulatory services report.
The rest between you things. Oh, okay. It's an oldie but a good one, yeah. Afternoon, everyone. So this report is our regular quarterly regulatory services update for the first quarter of the year. What can largely be taken as read and happy to answer any questions.